Welcome to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg.
All right, we are live from Laguna Beach in our I Own It studios, and today's guest is spectacular. He's a dear friend of mine. He's an international captain. He's a pilot. He's a friend, a mentor, a consultant. He is an expert at scaling businesses. He started a property management company at one time. He was one of the largest property management firms in the state of Texas, and he sold that business. And he's done extremely well. He's revered by a lot of people. He coaches a lot of people, and I want to welcome to the show today, Steve Rozenberg. What a pleasure! It's great to see you. You look fabulous as always, just ripped in your beast shirt. And just wanted to thank you for coming on today, and look forward to having the world and our audience get to know how special you are.
Hey, man, it's good to see you. Appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to chatting and kind of unpacking my story. I always tell people I'm like an onion. I have a lot of layers. It just depends how many layers deep you want to go. We can keep going. But it's good to see you as always. You look great. Love the Laguna Beach. You know, I'm a Southern California born and raised kid, so I get it. Miss it and miss some parts of it, I'll say. But it's good to see you.
You too, my friend. So obviously when you started, you were a pilot. And we talked about this in the past, how it provided you job security. And when you were that age, what was so appealing about having that security? And it kind of brought you to where you are today. And do you think society, like we overrate job security and we stress to younger people how important it is? How do you feel about that when you were younger and you said, I'm going to become a pilot because it's a stable career, it's in high demand, and I know I have great benefits?
That's a great question, Ben. I wish I could say I was that insightful as to why I wanted to be a pilot. To be honest, I thought looking up at the sky as a little kid growing up in Los Angeles and seeing these planes crossing over the top of LAX and knowing they're going over the ocean, I remember just looking at them and going, where do they go? Like, how do you even do that kind of job? I just remember that clear as day. And I'm thinking that would be cool to do. Like, I had no idea what the salaries were, the security. I was a kid growing up and no clue. I just thought, man, that would be neat. I want to do that. And, I just kept following that dream. And that was just something that I stuck to. As a kid, people said, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to be a pilot. Didn't know anything about it. Didn't know anyone in the industry. Didn't have a mentor. I just kind of set my sights on it. And, growing up playing sports in high school and college and other stuff, that was just kind of my destiny, I guess, if you will. I think that going back to your question, though, I think as our generation, you and myself, our elders, our parents, they're of the generation that you work hard and you have a career and that career takes care of you. And I saw my parents kind of seeing that dissolve a little bit. My dad was a pharmacist. He owned several pharmacies, and that kind of started dissolving because he wasn't the best business person. He was a good pharmacist, but not a good business person. And that's all we knew, right? It wasn't like nowadays where everyone's an entrepreneur. It's almost like the scales are tipping from people that are employees to entrepreneurs. I just thought to myself, you know what? This is a good job. This is what I do, and I'll move forward. And, to show how sheltered I was, I guess you could say, and, I grew up in Los Angeles, so I wouldn't say I was a sheltered kid, but I didn't even know what a mortgage was until I was in my 20s because I was just, I wasn't around any of that. I was so focused on just being a pilot that everything else was noise. It was static. And I'm a very, very focused person. I'm a very determined person to go down that path. So I don't know if I would say that it was necessarily job security. I would just say it was like, well, when you get up, you get a job, that's what you do, and you move forward down that path. And that's all I knew, so that's what I was doing.
Well, I was the same way. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an accountant, and that's what I'm going to get a salary, and that's what you do. And our parents and all the parents at that time instill in us saying, go get a job and build a career. And the entrepreneurial mindset back then wasn't really prevalent. Nowadays, it's like it's all over the place, and these kids have so much opportunity learning off the internet and everything. So it's a real advantage now And back then, I agree with you. Like, there was no knowledge. I didn't know what a mortgage is. There were certain aspects of business no one ever taught me. You had to kind of teach yourself through your lumps and bruises as you get older. And so 9/11 happens. Let's talk about this. You're this incredible pilot, doing well, young guy, flying the skies all over the place. 9/11 happens. What happens at that moment where the light bulb goes on and says, I got to make a change?
Sure. And just to give the listeners feedback, I was at the time, I was the second youngest person hired at this particular airline, which is average age is 35 years old. I was 25. So I was really young, and really it's just a matter of pig-headed, just, determination. Really. I would not give up. I wanted a job at a major airline, and I wasn't going to give up till I got one. And I got one at 25. And, the typical story is when you get a job at a major airline, you're done. Your career is set. You're good. You're in a union job. You are in a major airline, and it would take an act of God. I remember this, for you to lose your job or something to happen. Okay, great. So I'm 25 years old flying. I got based in Guam for my first position with the airline. I was flying all over the South Pacific, Asia, Australia. My wife and I were just married, and I was just living the dream. And in 2001, August of 2001, to be exact, we decided that we were going to head back to the mainland. Well, both of us, both being from Southern California, the particular company that I worked for at the time, they didn't have a pilot base in SoCal. So we decided that we were going to move to one of the bases, which was Houston, Texas. Never been to Houston, did not know anyone in Houston, knew nothing about it, but we figured, you know what, let's go. We go to Houston. Our stuff is on a boat en route from Guam to Houston when 9/11 hit. 2 days after the towers fell, I got delivered a furlough notice from this safe, secure airline. And basically what it said was, hey, you're a good employee, but we don't need you anymore. So that safe, secure job that you thought you had, it's gone. And everything else is gone with it. And really that was it. And it was like, good luck. And, this dream or illusion of this safe, secure job is within, we're dealing with 9/11, obviously was a huge catastrophe and a tragedy for many. But then I had my own. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't cause any of this to happen. I wasn't involved in it. I had nothing to do with it, but yet I'm a victim of it. And I use that word victim lightly because I realized that, many people had that mindset that they were victims. And after a couple of days of being that victim and thinking, poor me, how did this happen? I thought to myself, you know what? This is your fault. Like, you caused this to happen to yourself because you got lazy and you believed in an illusion that a job is going to protect you, and you let someone else be in control of your destiny. And it was at that moment that I told myself, you know what? I will never, ever, ever put myself or my family in that position again by letting someone else dictate my future. And that's when I started getting into real estate, because I wanted to see, well, what do wealthy people do? I had no clue. I mean, my whole life was focused on being a pilot. And all of a sudden, let's be real. If you can't fly a metal tube around in the sky, I'm really of no use to people. So I had to realize that the skill set that I had trained for my whole life was really useless, because there were 50,000 other pilots out there that could do the same job I could. And all of a sudden I realized, like, okay, being so specialized is actually not a benefit. It's actually a hindrance. And that's when I started learning about real estate. And I read a book a week on real estate to just get an understanding, to get a basis foundation of real estate. And I felt like I was up against the curve, because the way furloughs work in the airlines is they said, we're furloughing 1,200 pilots, and we're going to start at the bottom guy. And every month we're chopping 100 people until we feel that it's safe for the airline to survive. And now, being a business owner, I understand their perspective. They're protecting the shareholders. They're protecting the liquidity of the company. And I get it. And so I was basically on a chopping block that every month I'm waiting for my turn. It's like you're just waiting on death row. You're a dead man walking, essentially. Mm-hmm. So I was under the gun to hurry up and get this job or learn this new lifestyle of real estate. So that, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where it took me.
So you get into real estate, you can get into property management. How did you establish yourself and grow the business to where it was to be able to exit? I mean, how did that come about? Because you really had you're starting with no knowledge and you have to build a company. What happened?
Well, I started off as an investor. I started off buying properties, doing what's called wholesaling, double closes, a bunch of stuff because I had no idea what I was doing. I paid for mentorships like everybody. I got my butt kicked up and down the street. I got ripped off by contractors. Tenants ripped me off. I mean, you name it, right? But I kept getting back up because my back was against the wall and I had no choice. You know, it's interesting when you do what you have to do is different than what you should do. And I had to figure out this Rubik's Cube of a puzzle. So I just kept getting back up and I started buying properties and I learned what to buy, what not to buy. I was doing what's called wholesaling with options. I got really good at the negotiating side of real estate. And I started realizing that negotiators, communicators are actually the wealthiest people. And if you can learn how to negotiate and you can learn how to communicate, you can do very well in any field. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever the commodity is that you're selling. I've learned that the better communicator you are, the better off you'll be. I made enough money doing that I bought my first apartment complex. After that, I went into partnership with a couple people. We bought this unit in Houston, and then we ended up exiting and selling that property. And me and my business partner started buying a bunch of single family houses. And, you know, real estate, like any business, but real estate in particular, seems to have a very interesting way that as soon as you think that you're the smartest person out there and you know everything, it comes through like a wrecking ball and it just smashes everything that you know and it sets you straight. And that was us. And so we realized that we made a lot of bad acquisitions. We made a lot of mistakes buying properties because we thought we had just come from selling a apartment complex. We were fresh off of a big win. Nothing can go wrong. You know, the wind is in our sails. We are going to dominate. And next thing you know, we just got our butts handed to us, essentially. And it was so bad that my wife, she got to the point that saying, if you buy another house, it better be nice because you will be living in it because you suck at buying houses and you're no good. So I realized it was like an addict. I had a problem. My problem was buying crappy houses, essentially. And so we realized we needed to fix our situation. We had maybe 40, 50 properties at the time. And we had a problem. And so we decided, okay, we are too emotionally attached to these properties. We know what to do, but we're not doing it. And so we need to disconnect and we need to maybe hire a company. So my business partner says, hey, I'm going to interview some companies and I'll let you know in a couple weeks. So my business partner calls me back and he's like, hey, we got a problem. I'm like, please don't tell me we bought another house because I'm going to be living in this pretty soon. He goes, nobody wants them. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, nobody wants them because they're low income, they're high maintenance, they're high intensity, and they're just not the return. And I'm like, but you told me these were winners. And he's like, I don't know what to say. We're screwed. And I'm like, so the other option was that he and I figure it out, right? We knew what to do. We just knew what we weren't doing correctly. We end up basically sitting down and mapping out the infrastructure of how we would want our properties to run. We institute that infrastructure. That took us about 6 months to do. We did it from an investor's perspective. If I was hiring this company, how would I want it to run? Right. So we start building this company, and next thing you know, our properties stabilize and they're doing okay. And then we had other people approach us that we knew in the industry saying, hey, could you guys handle our assets? And at first we're like, hell no, we don't want your problems. We barely freaking figured out ours. Like, why would I take on your problems?
Right.
But then we started thinking, you know what, maybe there's economies of scale and maybe there's a business here. So we go to a business coach and we talk to he knows nothing about real estate, nothing about property management. And we said, okay, here's what we did. Here's where we're at. And here's what we're doing now. Do we have something here? Because we're so gun shy, right? Because we just got our butts handed to us with these 40, 50 properties. He goes, well, here's the deal. There's a market, there's scalability, and there is opportunity. So by definition, yes, you guys have a business. However, you two are not the smartest people on planet, and you will be bankrupt in 6 months if you keep running it this way. So we hire him on the spot. Now we have a business coach. We don't even know what we're doing, but we're like, we're going to do what this guy says. We couldn't afford him, but we couldn't afford not to have him, if that makes sense. So this guy scales us for the next 7 years. Every single week we go into this business coach for business. And this guy basically kicks our butt every single week for 7 years. We scaled to over 1,000 properties in 3 major cities. 60% of our company is outsourced to virtual assistants because we got so good at systemization and right person, right seat that we built a multi-million-dollar company, and then we exited and we sold to venture capital, a venture capital-backed company. And then I became a vice president for that company that had 10,000 properties and started doing, some bigger things. So that's how we grew and scaled. And, obviously all the, trials and tribulations that go on with scaling a business, we learned as we went.
Well, I think that's what's so amazing is you went through this experience, you went through the ups and downs, you learned, and now you're mentoring other people and consulting for other people, even for our company with your experience. And can you realize from all your experiences between the mindset, the discipline, the persistence, all these things you learn, how does that carry over to what you're teaching now, everyone, and consulting?
Yeah, I got to say it's the biggest challenge is mindset of the leader, mindset of the team, the culture of the company. You guys have a great culture, at your company, and obviously you're a great leader, so you're ahead of the game. I see all walks of life, and I coach people all over the world, in Australia, other places. Business is business, right? We are the limit of our growth, right? Our imagination, our scaling, our knowledge, that is normally the limitation of what we can and cannot do. And what I've learned, and one of the things that, as you know, being an airline pilot, now just so people understand, the whole time that all of this happened, I was an airline pilot. I still am. I fly a Boeing 777 for a major international airline all over the world. We took my knowledge and skill set from being trained by Boeing, by a major airline with checklists, standardization, procedures, and that's what we injected into our company. So when I work with businesses, the goal is for them to understand, how does this thing run without me? To where you look at an aircraft, I'll give you an example. When you buy an airline ticket and you want to go to London at 7:05 a.m. on September 1st, at 7:05 a.m., that plane is there. Your bags are loaded and it goes. How does that happen? That's not by chance. That's by systemization and standardization. And the president of the airline is not standing out in front of the plane making sure everything is done. It's done through standards, procedures, policies, and checklists. Every business can run that way as long as the leaders let go enough to let the business actually run. So unfortunately, the biggest challenge with growing a company is getting that leader to get out of their way, to let ego and pride step aside and let the business actually do what it's supposed to do, which is run by processes and procedures. Because if not, you don't own a business, you own a job. And you got to call it what it is. If you can't walk away for 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months, it's not a business. It is a job. And if you don't have a plan to scale and grow, like flying an airplane, you've got 2 options. You will either run out of gas or you will die with that business. Those are your 2 options if you don't have a succession plan to scale and grow it.
And you brought up a good point. Every day, especially as a leader or leaders out there, how do you wake up and you got the grind and you do it for years? I've been doing it for 28 years. It's challenging every day. It's challenging. You gotta get up. You gotta grind. You gotta lead. You gotta be fearless. And it is really challenging to say to yourself, okay, I'm great at this. I can do this. I can coach others and teach others. It's a challenge. I mean, how do you deal with it? And where do you see the issues in between? And you could offer advice to people.
Yeah, the biggest challenge most people have when they have a business is they don't have an end goal. And, one of my mentors early on, I remember he just finished speaking on stage in front of thousands of people. And I just happened to be sitting next to him at the bar. And he says to me, "Steve, when's the date?" And I'm thinking to myself, date for what? And he says, "The date you sell your business." And I said to him, he just was speaking on generational wealth and how you got to grow and scale. And I said, "Oh, I'm not going to sell my business." I said, "This is generational wealth." And I basically regurgitated what he just said on stage. He said, "You don't understand." And I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking to myself, I shouldn't have sat next to this guy because this is about to get very uncomfortable. But he says, "You don't understand." He said, "The reason you have to have a sale date is you have to have a finite date and time that something is going to happen. And he goes, you work everything backwards from that date, because if you don't have a sale date, that means you don't have a saleable asset. A saleable asset means that the business runs without any of your involvement. And he said that date becomes your why. And that why is what drives you through good days, bad days, rainy nights, frustration, is you keep your eye on that why. And he goes, that is what will do it. He goes, the how and all the motivation is like a battery. It will drain over time. The why you're doing something, and doesn't mean you have to sell it, but it means that it is a saleable asset and it's completed. If not, it goes in the someday file, which we all know is the busiest day on the calendar because it never comes. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be working towards that. So I think many business owners, they don't have that final date. So if, like, I'll give you an example, Ben, you're in Laguna Beach. If you told the family, hey, we're going to go to Disneyland and the gates open at 8:00. So we're going to leave at 6:15, in the car, we're driving to Disneyland so we can be there at 8 a.m. That's the goal. The goal is Disneyland, and that's a date and a time in the future. And you're working everything backwards. You're thinking of traffic. You're thinking of the car. You're thinking of parking. Now, if you got lost along the way en route to Disneyland and you pulled over and I was on the side of the road, you would say, hey, can I get directions? And I would say, where are you going? And you said Disneyland. And I'd go, okay, well, you got to jump on the 5 to whatever. Well, how many business people jump in the car and just start driving and they don't have a destination? They don't know where they're going. They don't have a Disneyland. And so when they pull over and they ask someone like me, who's a mentor, and they say, hey, Steve, can you help me? My first question is, where are you going? And they say, I don't know. I'm just busy being busy. And I'm going to go, well, then I can't give you directions to your destination because you haven't defined it. So the biggest, going back to your question, the biggest challenge most business owners have is they don't start with the end in mind. And if you can start with the end and work it backwards, almost like a string, and work it backwards, you're going to have a lot more success building a business that way than trying to just be busy to be busy. I think that you and I come from the same mindset, which is probably from our parents, that hard work breeds success. If you work hard long enough, you will be successful. However, there's no proof that working hard is going to make you successful. As a matter of fact, if that were the case, construction workers and day laborers would be the wealthiest people on the planet, but they're not. So it's a lie. We tell ourselves that lie because we don't want to do the things that we should be doing as the boss and CEO. So we're busy being busy in the business, not working on the business. And so we go, man, I was busy today, but I don't know what I did, but I was just busy.
But isn't that's the challenge? It was a challenge for me. It's a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders, is that, okay, I'm the jack of all trades. I had to start this thing. I have to know every aspect, every department. Now all of a sudden, Steve's asking me to step away and say, I have to trust the people to run their departments. If they don't, they're out, and we'll replace them. We're creating a machine where everyone's replaceable, and we just plug and play. But the human nature side of it is there's a culture, there's politics, there's people's personal lives that come into play. It is challenging to step away as a leader from, and how do you teach that? Because it is tough to say, okay, I had to do everything to build this thing. Now you're asking me to step away and say, okay, you have to manage it. You have to take this 30,000 foot view instead of being in it every day.
Yeah. And so you're right. It is tough because when we birth a business, it's ours. It's our DNA, right? It's our identity. But the challenge is a business has no one's DNA or identity on it. A business needs to run in of itself and be completely independent. So you have to go through a mental, of letting that child become a teenager, become an adult, and let that adult run on its own. And at some point, the business has to stand on its own, and you are a contributing factor to that business. And so the biggest, one of the challenges we have as entrepreneurs is there's no rule book. Like when you started your business doing this 28 years ago, someone didn't come to you and go, hey, Ben, here's the manual and the systems in the book that you're going to need for the next 30 years to be successful. No, you had to create it, and you had to use trial and error, and you had to figure it out. Specifically for you, right? You were in Chicago, now you're in Southern California. You have a lot of different dynamics. Your businesses span across the United States, very successful, which was comprised of probably, I'm guessing, a lot of failures like we all have. Like we learn from our failures, not our successes.
Yes.
And a lot of times when we have those failures, we define what we're afraid of based on the failures. So it's we are afraid of loss as opposed to looking at that loss and saying, okay, what did I learn from that? And how did that actually make me more successful? Because most people, if you really boil it down, their successes are built on top of the failures, not on their wins. And so you as the owner, I would say, okay, Ben, you're the owner of the company. What are your job responsibilities? And what are you doing to grow the company? So many times as owners, we're always looking over our shoulder and we're circling back and we put on, we if somebody's not doing their job, right? I'm guessing, let me, and I'm for the guests, for the people watching, they can, learn this, but when you have an employee and if they're really messing up, I'm guessing you'd roll up your sleeves and you'd probably start helping them. And if they were really messing up and your business was in jeopardy, you would jump right in, correct? And you would probably push them aside because you don't want to get sued or lose the job. Is that right?
Yeah, that's an accurate statement.
Okay. So let me take this a step further. When you get on an aircraft, you turn right. You get in the jetway, you turn right. You go sit in your first class seat, you buckle up, you put your headphones on, not a care in the world. You are wondering if you're going to be on time. You're never wondering, am I going to live today?
Right.
You never turn left. Do you know what left is?
Yeah,
left is where we sit. That's
right.
where the cockpit.
Right. It's like, hey, do we have turbulence or how's this flight going to go? I
So
never do that.
think about this. You don't know me. You've never met me. You have no idea anything about my training, but you trust me. There's inherent trust. Why would you trust me, someone you've never met, someone you know nothing about, and you trust your life? You trust your family's lives. Your livelihood, everything is in my hands, but you've never met me. And if it got really bad, and I know you fly a lot, if it got really turbulent and the bad winds and thunderstorms, would you storm the cockpit and pull the pilot out and be like, hey, I got this. You know what? You're having a bad day. I'm going to take care of this.
Right.
Right. I mean, I've been flying for 30 years. I've never had someone knock on the cockpit door and say, hey, I think I'm going to jump in here. You guys aren't doing a good job.
You're so big. I think it would be a tough thing for me to start grabbing you and be like, you're like, who are you? And what the hell are you doing in the cockpit?
So if you take that same analogy, right, you have an employee that you interviewed, you hired, you trained, but you don't trust them. But you trust me. So you've got to ask yourself, why is there an inherent trust towards pilots that you've never met, but not the inherent trust with your team? Do you know what it is?
It's me. It's the root experiences. It's what you've been through in the past.
Well, it's yes, it's the fear of loss, but you trust us because look, pilots aren't perfect, right? We make mistakes.
Right.
But the systems are so good that they catch our mistakes. Our systems and our structure catches our lack of ability to be 100% perfect. If you could build your business with catches and systems and things to catch people's mistakes, you would need to roll up your sleeves and push them around. You go, the system's going to catch it. Either the other pilot's going to catch it, or worst case, there's systemization, standardization, checklists that are going to catch them. Because if that wasn't the case, there'd be a lot more crashes. There'd be a lot more catastrophes. Well, I was just going to say there's not because of the standardization and the systemization of the airline industry. And so if you could take that same ideology and inject that into your business, you'd go we would never have the chief pilot even come up to the cockpit and be like, hey guys, you're not doing a good job. I got this. They're going to go, no, they know what they're doing. They're professionals. They've been trained and we have systems in place to catch things. Do your thing. So it's an interesting thing to think about when you think about your business. I mean, look, your business, you're selling a product, service, concept, or idea. The airlines are the same thing. What's the difference is they spend more time on the training and standardization than probably any other industry in the world. But look at their track record of crashes. You're pissed if you're 5 minutes late and you've got to wait for your luggage to come down. But think of everything that happens to make that happen. So just a perspective.
Is this what motivates you to teach and coach others in business, saying, look, let me show you the way. And that's what inspires you to do this on a consistent basis?
Yeah, it does, because when I hate to say you've seen the light, right? But the reality is when you've seen a way that things are done, and you're like, okay, I get it, I understand it. There is a better way, and the thing is we built our business that way. So I'm not talking out of turn. I'm not talking out of theory. I'm not one of these college professors that have never had a job. I did it with a company from scratch, from a failure, being a failure as a real estate investor, which essentially is what I was, to building a very, very successful business and using the dynamics of real estate. And as you know, I've spoken all over the world. I've toured Australia as a speaker on this very subject, because everybody wants to know, how do airlines do that? If I have that ability to help impart that wisdom, then why not? And so one of the things you had mentioned about how do you step out of that, of being that boss, how do you remove yourself? Because that's the big thing, right? How do you hire employees, but they rob you blind, they don't do their job. Well, as you know, that's all metrics, right? Those are key performance indicators, and you trust but verify. The company, any company, needs to run on data and numbers, not off of emotions. It's facts and figures, and that's what all companies should run on. Now, the challenge is this is not an overnight change. I come in and say, hey, Ben, you need to start running your company off of KPIs and let everyone do everything. It's not, look, you've been doing this for 28 years, right? You're not just going to embrace this 100%. You're going to go, well, I'm going to embrace it, but I'm still going to keep my foot wedged in the door here in case I got to rip it open and jump back in, right? Because, because your livelihood is based on that, and it makes sense. But shouldn't you be focused more on the training and scaling side to be able to make this a generational company as opposed to just being busy? That's the question you have to ask and answer.
No, it's a great point. I think one of the things you brought up was failure. And I think, like in the past, you and I, when we learn business and life, it's like, okay, you failed, you have to go do something else. Instead of someone saying, look, you failed, learn for your failure, keep doing what you're doing and progress and improve. Instead of back in the day when we were kids, it's like, okay, you failed, that wasn't really your niche, go do something else. And it is your mindset, and it's fear of loss, and I'm not going to be successful. And I agree with you. I think all of us entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, you have to fail. If you don't fail, you're not in business, and you won't learn and you won't grow. And do you feel that difference in generations is something that people struggle with? Because I think when we were younger, you and I, it was more about, well, that wasn't really your niche, you should be doing something else.
100%, Ben. I think a lot of times when people, I look, as you know, I work with a lot of people and a lot of businesses, all levels, from a brand new entrepreneurs to very, very successful businesses like yourself. And a lot of people, it's funny because I talk to them, I'm like, well, what's your fear? They're like, well, I don't want to look dumb. I'm like, okay, so who are you afraid of looking dumb in front of? They're like, well, like social media. I'm like, you have 300 followers. Do you think anyone cares? Like, and the reality is you're not as important as people think, right?
Right.
You're not as important as you think. We all think we're much more important, and we've got this thing that we have to keep up. If you fail at something, they're going to go, yeah, he failed. The thing is it's not if you fail, it's what you do after the failure. And I always tell people, like, look, you cannot predict what's going to happen today. Look, I can't predict that I'm going to drive to the store and get carjacked today. Right? Get no car accident. Somebody steal my wallet. I cannot change what is going to happen to me, but I can change what happens after the fact. How do I handle it? How do I address it? That's what I do have the power to change. Look, bad things happen to good people. People get cancer. They don't deserve it, but how do they handle it? And so I think as entrepreneurs, we have this facade up that we think we're so important, and especially with social media, right? We're in this fake bubble, and nobody cares. And I tell people all the time, like,
cares.
Nobody cares. And I tell people all the time, everybody's living their life. And the reality is people would rather see someone fail than see you succeed. That's just human nature. They would rather say, you know what? Yeah, Ben tried. I knew he shouldn't have done it. He failed. Good for him. That'll teach him a lesson. He should be a regular employee just like the rest of us and get his licks and do a 9 to 5. And then when you succeed, what that does is that puts a spotlight on them and they go, shit, maybe I should be doing something better in my life. Ben actually did it. Holy shit.
Let me go put down Ben because I wanted what he did, but I didn't have the guts or the skill or the risk. And it's such a great point. I mean, one of the things I say is that you really want to be solution oriented. Not you want to spend a few moments on the problem and then a majority of your time on the solutions. Is that something that you have to coach and teach people on a significant basis?
Very much. And what's interesting is and I just had a big 3-day mastermind, and TW Mock was there as you know.
Yeah,
and we talked about this. And what's funny is all of us, very much, it was myself, Kevin Elko, Weldon Long, TW, and we all basically said the same thing. And what's interesting is, and this is what I told the attendees, I said, do you notice I haven't talked to these guys before they showed up, but we all basically said the same line of windshield, rear view. You hit a pothole driving down the road. If you're staring at the rear view mirror, looking at that pothole, you've got a whole windshield in front of you. So many people, they focus on what happens. I remember one of my mentors, as you know, Marshall Silver, as a friend of both of ours, he told me, he said, look, he goes, you get a bad deal. I get it. He goes, you eat Chinese food and you have a bad meal. Does that mean you never go out to dinner again? Does it mean you never eat Chinese food again? No, you may not eat at that place again. You learned your lesson, but it doesn't mean you're not going to eat again. And so a lot of times they focus and they dwell on that bad meal. And most successful entrepreneurs, they go, you know what? It's just part of it. I mean, you, as well as I and many other people, will tell you that they have failed far more than they've probably succeeded. But those failures were the biggest lessons that they've ever learned. And failing is not, it doesn't define you. Being a failure, if you quit, that will define you as a failure. But if you keep getting back up, just like when I was learning real estate, I was failing, but I wasn't a failure. I refused to stay down because I knew I didn't have a choice. So I failed at it, but I was not a failure at it. And so I think that's something that I had. All ego and pride went out the window. I didn't care. I was doing what I had to do. And it's funny, when you have to do something, you really don't care what people think because you're doing what you have to do. So it's a matter of figuring out what it is you have to do and making that your drive. And again, that's all tied to the end goal of your Disneyland with a date and time. And most people don't do that. So they get lost in the weeds, and that pendulum starts swinging, and they start listening to the quitters and the naysayers and all the other people. And then they fail off.
So you're still flying, which to me is like amazing, because we have a joke in my family: where in the world is Steve today? And then I look and I see, and you're like in Amsterdam or Tokyo or all these amazing cities. Out of all the things you're doing, like you're speaking now, you wrote a book, you're doing masterminds, you are really a man all over the place since we met. And what do you enjoy the most? I mean, what's really gravitating to you, saying, wow, I really enjoy this part of my life? Which segment is that?
Two things I would say. The one thing is that what we're doing right here, you and I having conversation, and the proverbial breaking bread of us having this conversation. I really enjoy that, because I think whatever business you're in, it's all about the relationship. And you and I, we've had many conversations, and we've had dinners, and it's the friendship. It's the bond that you get between people. And when something's fake and when something's not. You and I have been around enough people to know when someone's fake and when they're not. And I really enjoy just the conversations, because you want to be around like-minded people. You and I are very like-minded, and we enjoy each other's company, and we enjoy talking business and having conversation and just thinking. Now, the other part is helping people to get that light bulb to get off, that aha moment, that when I'm talking to them. I did this mastermind this weekend, and some of these people came up to me, and I thought it was a great mastermind. It was a 3-day event, and these people were like, this was life-changing. And I'm thinking to myself, man, like, this was an idea in my head that I basically created, formulated, put into action. And now I've got people here telling me that whatever it was that happened this weekend, I don't know, I couldn't say like something that I did or said or something, but they're like, everything is going to change the direction of my life because of that, which is going to change the direction of my children's lives. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, like that's something that was in my head that I got out, and now I transferred it to them and to all these other people. So that to me is very rewarding because you know as well as I do, Ben, the amount of money in your bank account does not define happiness. The amount of assets and properties and other things, that does not define happiness. At some point, you've got to define memories. And the memories, I think, are what create what you want. And so, you know, I a lot of people when I talk to entrepreneurs, I'll ask them why, you know, my first question is, why are you doing this? What give me your why? And of course, many people don't have that. And they may say, I want freedom. Well, I would tell them, take it a step further because look, you can sell all your shit tomorrow and go live on the beach in a VW van and have all the freedom you want. But what you're not going to have is you're not going to like the memories that freedom gave you. So you're not buying freedom. You're buying the memories that freedom gives you, whether it's dinner in Greece on the Mediterranean, having a safari with the family in Africa. The money from the business is giving you that ability to do that. And so we're buying memories. At the end of the day, when we go in the ground, all we have is our memories. And so I want people to understand that all these materialistic things, I'm an airline pilot. I have more memories of sunrises and sunsets than anyone can imagine. Those are memories that can never be replaced. Money can't buy those sunrises and sunsets and crossing over the Atlantic and South Pacific to Australia. That's a memory that I have, that I get to be selfish and I get to keep that memory. So I would say that the memories are what drive me to show people that that's the most important thing.
That's amazing because all of us, you know, we need to make money and you want to grow a business and say, look at me. You said I couldn't do it and I did it, and you're battling that. And then as you mature, you're saying, you know, like you said, you know, create memories. And I think that's really challenging for people, especially when you're younger, because you're grinding and you're saying, okay, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it to make money. I'm doing it. I want a family. I want kids. I want a house. I want the American dream, whatever that is. And to make that point about memories is so powerful, Steve. I think that's awesome. We're here with Steve Rozenberg today, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And you're such a treat to have on because you offer so much value. When you're speaking around the world and you're out there, what are a lot of the things that you hear that when people come up to you at breaks, or what are some of the challenges? What's a common thread that you're hearing from people that people can learn from?
Well, the first is they thought I was a police officer here to arrest someone or an undercover narcotics cop or a biker or something. So that's the first thing, is overcoming who am I and who am I here to take out? So that's the first thing.
Who's this guy who looks like Mr. Clean who's got tats all over?
Does anybody owe someone money in the room?
His uniform.
Does somebody owe someone money because someone's here to collect?
Right.
So, you know, the common thing, what's interesting is because, look, I'm not a very smart person. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I don't profess to have all these degrees or acronyms behind my names. I'm an average person, right? And I've had a better than average life, and I'm very blessed to have what I have. But nothing was given to me. Nothing was by chance. It was all calculated because I calculated it. And so a lot of people can relate to me because I still have a job as an airline pilot. Now, I do it because I love doing it. Do I need to do it? I'd probably be okay not flying, doing the other stuff that I do, but I do it because I love it, because I like the memories that it creates. So a lot of people will come up to me and they'll say, man, like, I can relate to you. Like, there's other people that are, you know, there's other people that are speakers and presenters and stuff. And they'll say, you know, I can't really relate to them. I'm just an average person that's done above average things, and they can relate to the fact that, hey, I have failed at many things, and I have no problem talking about my failures and explaining where and how I failed, so that they just think they like the fact that I'm real. And I have one guy, it's funny, I've got a guy that I coach. He runs a hedge fund and lives in Connecticut, very, very wealthy. And he wanted to learn about real estate. And as I started coaching him and his wife, it got more into just kind of like life coaching. So now I help him just kind of like life stuff. And he said to me one day, he goes, you know, Steve, he goes, do you know why I hired you as a coach? And I'm like, I have no idea, man. He goes, look, he goes, I've been coached by many people. I'm with a big firm and blah, 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 blah. He goes, I've seen all that. He goes, you're not a dick. He goes, that's the only way I could describe it. He goes, I feel like I can be open with you. I can talk to you. I can give you my vulnerabilities, my weaknesses. And he goes, you leave me thinking, okay, with more thoughts of how to be better. He goes, you don't judge me. You don't tell me how stupid I am. You don't nothing. He goes, you encourage me. You encourage my family. And he goes, you just make me want to be a better person. And he goes, I've never run across someone that can do that the way you do. So do I have a special skill? I don't know. I mean, maybe I resonate with some people, and I'm sure there's other people that I don't. I'm sure some people look at me and they're like, he's full of BS. You know, he's not even a pilot. And some people that fly say that to me too. So that's okay. But, you know, I just think that a lot of times, I like the fact that I can connect with people. That to me is the most important thing, that I'm relatable.
You're very relatable. I know from personal experience, I can always be vulnerable in front of you, which I love. And it's something I've learned. And I think you bring up a great point, is be your authentic self. Your authentic self that I've learned, I know you have as well, we've talked about this, allows you to open up new concepts, ideas, relationships. It allows people to say, wow, he's really vulnerable in front of me. I can mirror that back to him or her. And I think that's a really important point that you bring up. And I think it's really important in business, is with your employees or a leader saying, look, I'm just like you. Yeah, I'm taking risk and I'm leading and I'm going to teach and coach and mentor and all the things I'm going to do as a leader. But I bleed just like you. I have issues. I have mindset challenges. You know, well, I'm authentic. And I think when folks can come off as their authentic self, I think you open doors and pathways that you wouldn't even dream of, that people will resonate with you. They'll trust you. They'll want to do business with you. And I just found that that's how I live my life. And it's hard because your mind, and you know this, like, you can't be worried about what people think of you. And I think it's really challenging because that's what stops people from being authentic. It's like, well, I'm going to worry because Steve's going to judge me. And that's what makes you so special. And I could say that from personal experience, is that you don't judge people. You allow people and employees and the people you coach and the people you speak to the ability to come up to you and not only learn about you, but share their experiences and their struggles. And I think that's phenomenal what you do.
Well, and I thank you. I appreciate that. And the only thing I would say is, I think I do judge people, but I judge them on the positive. So a lot of people, when they think of judgment, they think of judging negative, like you're judging me. It's like, but there's two sides of judging. There's judging negative, and then there's judging positive. I just choose to see the best in you, and I choose to discuss that side of it. And so I think that, you know, a lot of people have that connotation, like, oh, you're critiquing me, but critiquing could be a positive critique, depending on, you know, that most people are judged and critiqued on the negative side. So I guess I would say is I do judge people, but I guess the way I do it is I do it on the positive. Like, okay, yes, we know what you suck at, but what are you good at? Like, and I tell people all the time, they're like, well, if I start this business and I do this, I could fail. I'm like, but you could succeed, right? I mean, that's why we're doing this. You're doing this because there is a glimmer of hope that you could succeed in what you're doing. So why don't we focus on the succeeding part instead of the failing part? And let's just see where this goes. And let's plan for success. It's kind of like flying an airplane. We could all die. There is a chance. I fly 350 people around the world. There is a chance that we could all die, but there's a better chance we're going to live. So why don't we focus on the living and getting to the destination? And if, you know, we prepare for the worst, but we plan for the best. And so I think I've learned a lot of that from flying. And I think a lot of those analogies have come to me from the standardization of getting the people from A to B and the destination, but then I've wrapped it around a business model.
Well, you're a man who owns it, which is the name of this show, is owning every aspect of your life. And we're all works in progress, as you know, because you coach so many people, you see it every day. Was there a time where you didn't own it and you said to yourself, like, hey, I gotta rechange my mindset. I'm not owning it. I gotta have a different perspective. When did that happen in your life?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say when I sold my company, when me and my business partner sold our company, I was in a bit of a funk because, you know, when you sell a company and, you know, you sell it for, you know, well into 7 figures, you're kind of like, okay, I achieved the goal, right? You're thinking I'm there, right? I'm in this magical club. I'm going to get a Letterman's jacket. People are going to pat me on the back. I'm going to be in this fancy club. Everyone's going to be, and all of a sudden it's still, next thing you know, it's Monday. Hey, you got to take the trash out. And I'm like, yeah, but we just sold a business. It's like, I don't give a shit. You got to take the trash out. It's Monday. And so it's this anticlimactic thing. And all of a sudden you're sitting around and you're like, okay, what do I do? Like, okay, we sold the company. Like, do I do something else? Is that like, do I give this time back? Do I go work at the soup shelter? Like, I don't know what to do now. So I really felt lost, and my business partner did as well. He got a little more depressed than I did, which, I don't know if you know this, but Olympic athletes and astronauts have a very high rate of depression, because once they achieve a gold medal or they get to the moon, there's no more gold medals or moon. So that's kind of gone.
Was that because they spent all that time training for that end result, and all of a sudden it happens?
And they get their ticker tape parade and it's over and no one cares, right? I sold this company, no one cared. I wasn't in this magical club. I wasn't invited to here. And so all of a sudden I had to really think about, like, okay, what do I do? Like, what's my purpose in life? And, my analogy or my answer to this, and this is what I say this a lot, is I have learned that our lives are a book, right? And books are made up of chapters. Some chapters are long, some chapters are short. So our high school years were chapters. Our college years were chapters. Our 20s were chapters. These are all chapters. The thing about a chapter is a chapter begins and then a chapter ends. And it doesn't need to be a bad chapter to end. A chapter could end on a good note, like me selling my company. We didn't sell it because we needed to. For me, it was just personally time to leave, and it was time to exit. So I had to realize that chapter was gone. You can't go back. Like, we all have friends in high school that go back and relive those high school days, even to the age bracket that we're in now. We all have those friends that they've never shut that chapter. And so what I realized is my chapter of owning that business was over, and I've got to start a new chapter in my life. I've got to do something else. And so that chapter was starting to coach and mentor. So during that time frame, I don't want to say I had to find myself, but I really had to think, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Now, granted, I was an airline pilot this whole time, but I wasn't thinking that. I'm someone who's always trying to move forward and be better. So that was definitely a time in my life that I really had to identify, who am I? What am I good at? And where do I want to go with this?
That's fascinating, because it's so true. It's whether you sell a company, you sell a portfolio, a piece of property, you have success, and then you're like, okay, I did that. What's next? And it's interesting to hear you say that, because I go through that as well on a consistent basis when we sell properties, to say, okay, we had great success. We're a high, okay, Monday comes around, we're just starting all over. We just keep going, and you just keep going and keep persevering. When you're speaking, do you get more gratitude now from serving others than when you were running the property management and flying, and you could say, wow, this is really my calling, and I really enjoy serving. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to help people. How does that feel now that you're in such a different position than when you were in your 20s and 30s, and now you've developed into this persona? How does that feel for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do. Because when I was doing it, when I owned my business and I was traveling around the world, speaking, it was really to build the business. It was to get clientele. Yes, I'm educating, but the underwriting current was to grow the company. And my business partner, and out of respect for him, and I was always conscientious of this, he would always ask, like, okay, is this going to help us get a client or keep a client? Like, what is the reason you're going and traveling to Australia or China or whatever? And so I always, and to my allegiance was to the company, because that was my job and that's what he had me doing. And that's what we agreed my role was going to be, was to be the face of the company. So I couldn't do it for self-serving needs. I couldn't do it because I wanted to help people. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to grow the company. And if I got on stage, that was the reason. The underlying current was, okay, are we growing the company? It may just be branding, but are we growing the company? Well, after I sold the company, now I don't have to worry about getting clients, right? I don't have to, you saw me speaking at an event when we first met. I do it because I love doing it and I love educating. Whether I get a client from it, I'm fine. Like, I could not coach anyone again and I would be fine. I could not fly again and I would be fine. My real estate holdings, my assets, my ownership in businesses, I'm okay, right? So I do it because I like to do it and I enjoy that side of it. So when you're good at something, and I say I'm good because I practice and I'm very, very focused when I'm on stage speaking, to be the best I could be. When you do that and you're able to make a difference, you do it because you like doing it, because you're seeing that difference being made, not because you're doing it for an ulterior motive. And so I enjoy that side of it much, much better now.
First of all, you and I share a lot of meals together, and if you were here, I brought you this great bottle of wine from California. It's one of my favorites. They're hard to get. You have to be a member. So, Steve's drink of choice whenever we're together, we usually have a steak, especially because I'm from Chicago, he's from Houston. So we both are, we're both big into steak, and he likes a bullet on the rocks, which is always his drink of choice. And we always wrap up the show with 3 questions. Okay, so I'm going to lay them on you because I want to hear your answers, especially because we have such a deep-rooted relationship. So we start off, and you're in the I Own It studios with me. We have a couch, and you're sitting on the couch, and I tell you to close your eyes, and I say, my friend, Steve. So you're who you are now. You went through all these experiences. Go back, close your eyes, go back to when you were 16 years old and all the lessons you've learned and the challenges and your accomplishments. What would a handsome, experienced Steve Rozenberg tell his 16-year-old self? By the way, there's no right or wrong. It's just go ahead and free associate.
I would tell myself to move faster and don't be afraid of the failures and be okay with the lessons that you learned, but do it faster. Fail fast, fail often, and get back up each time. And I think to a degree I've lived that life, but I don't think I've operated at the speed that I could have. And I think I've probably lost about 15 years of gratitude of helping other people had I done this faster. And the other
same way.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing I would tell myself is don't try to please everyone. Just do what you know is best in your heart and focus on that. And don't let like the static of other people talking in your ear of what you should and shouldn't do.
Wow, that was awesome. What if it was our last day on earth together? Okay, and you have to choose the last meal. What are we eating?
Oh boy.
It could be anything. We can go anywhere. Eat anything. What is it?
Last meal. Wow. I've had a lot of good meals, man. I think the last meal, I think I'd want to have lobster.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think lobster. I like lobster a lot.
And what are you washing that lobster down with? What are we washing it down with?
Oh, whiskey. Bullet on the rocks.
Okay. All
Bullet,
right,
or yeah, we're washing,
it.
or some Pappy Van Winkle.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're having some whiskey with it, 100%.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So in these studios, the I Own It studios, we have a grant. Like, you're gonna have to come here next time. I mean, you're a Southern California boy. It's we need you here. So to my left, you're right. I have a grand piano. We have a drum set, and we have like 6 electric guitars. And if you had your choice, we could bring in a band or a musician. They could be deceased, they could be living, it could be anyone you want to play us a song. Who are you having in the studio with us?
Metallica.
Oh, baby. Love it.
Metallica. Without a doubt, it would be Metallica. 100%.
I think the windows would be blowing out in this.
Oh, I love it, man.
We'd have to figure out how to secure it because they would be rocking the house.
Yeah, 100% Metallica, man. That is my speed all day long.
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love that. Well, what is the obviously I follow you on all the social media platforms because I love your tips and advice, and I'm always learning from you, which I really love. What's the best way to follow you? Is it your website, steverozenberg.com?
Yeah, I think if they wanted to at least learn about me, they can go to Steve Rozenberg, and it's ROZENBERG.com, or they can follow me Instagram, YouTube, all the standard Facebooks. They can follow me on any of those. As you said, I do create a lot of content. I'm out there pushing a lot of stuff, and it's all education. I'm not trying to sell my services. I do have a mastermind that I do and other coaching services. But again, to me, it's all about education. I've got to be able to educate, and I've got to be able to resonate with you before we can even talk about me coaching you, because I'm very specific with who I want to help, because they have to want to be helped. And so if they don't want to be helped, then I'm not the person for them, or I just don't communicate with them. We're not going to be the right people. Because, I'm a firm believer that if you hire me to help you, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to help you grow your business. And sometimes that means having tough conversations and saying some things that you may not want to hear that needs to be done and needs to be said. So, but yeah, if people want to follow me, I'd love to do it. If you want to, people reach out to me all the time on Instagram and other places. They send me messages and I always answer them. It is me. I do answer them because I think it's respectful. If you take the time to ask me a question, I think it's respectful that I answer you back. So I do answer questions when people ask me, and it is me.
He is phenomenal at responding back. I could tell you from firsthand. He's been on airplanes riding over the ocean, and he's texting me, which is really amazing. The other thing is, I suggest for our audience, if you want to grow your business, you need help with your business, go see Steve speak. Because once you see him speak and you understand really what he does, I think you'll reflect back and say, okay, this is someone I need to incorporate in my life and my business. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, that's what we did at my company. It's been very successful so far. So definitely go see Steve speak. If you want to follow the I Own It podcast, click on the lower right-hand button and subscribe to us. If you want to learn more about me, go to benreinberg.com. Also go to our company, alliancecgc.com. If you want to learn about commercial real estate, invest in commercial real estate, we're here to support you and teach you and provide you as much content as possible. Steve, my friend, it was great seeing you. What a pleasure to have you on the show today. You're always a wealth of knowledge. And thank you for sharing your experiences, all your advice to our audience. And I'm very grateful. Now you're a dear friend and a business colleague, but someone who myself and everyone around me that are consistently learning from your experiences and your knowledge. So want to thank you, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ben. And you definitely set a good example. I use you as a lot as a reference when I'm talking to other potential clients of, this, you want to be successful, go look at this guy. This guy breeds success. Everything about him is successful. And it's not just, in the industry he is, it's who he is. And so I would say, you have a great knack for bringing out the best in people, and people need to learn more about you and who you are and what you do, because they definitely should emulate you as much as possible, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And you're the perfect example of someone that owns it. And that's why we created this show, as folks like you, to teach others, saying, how do you own it too? So Steve Rozenberg, thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg. To hear our past episodes and connect with Ben, visit benreinberg.com.